Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Thanks so much for popping on and sharing a bit of your day with me. Drop a yes in the comments in the chat if you can see and hear me okay. Today is Wednesday. Here at Nick at Noon, we talk about money. Okay. So we're going to be getting into this money conversation. Specifically, we are going to be talking about how much money you can make in your first year of coaching. And I'm not talking about the highlight reel. I'm not going to be talking about the screenshots. I'm going to be talking about the real numbers. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. Drop a yes in the chat if you can see and hear me okay, because we are about to get into this thing, okay? We are going to be talking about legitimately, for real, how much money you can make in your first year as a coach. But before we get into that, I do want to start off with a question. And that question is, if your job disappeared tomorrow, what would you have? And I'm asking that not as a scary question, but as an honest one. Because the women who have built a career, the ones who have developed skills, the ones who have created value for their employers, almost none of that value is generating income for them when they're not clocked in. And the fact of the matter is your 9 to 5, it was never meant to be your only income stream. And the events of the last few years, particularly over the last 12 months, the layoffs, the restructurings, entire industries that have been shifting overnight, those events have made that truth that your 9 to 5 was never meant to be your only income stream, it has made that truth impossible to ignore. And the women who have options, those are the ones who built something alongside of their job, not instead of their job, but alongside of it. And today, I want to show you what building that something, what it looks like in real numbers. In this conversation, I want to have the money talk that most coaches, quite honestly, they're just too afraid to ask, to have with you. And this isn't going to be the conversation with the screenshot of a $47,000 a month or the one with the vague promise of six figures in 90 days. I'm going to have the real money conversation with y'all today. I'm going to have the conversation with actual numbers, with real timelines and an honest picture of what building a consistent coaching income, what it really looks like in your first year. Because I think the coaching industry's relationship with the money numbers is doing damage to women who are trying to build businesses. And today, I want to do something totally different. Welcome back to Nick at Noon. My name is Nick Scott, and I am the founder of Her Income Edit. And that is an online education platform where I help professional women turn their existing skills into multiple streams of income through coaching and digital offers. And we do this without you leaving your 9 to 5, without the burnout, without the hustle, and without starting from scratch. And today, is Money Wednesday. On Wednesdays here at Nick at Noon, we talk about money. And before we get into the episode, I do want to mention real quick that I am hosting a live workshop on May 30th, and it's called Her Income Lab. And in Her Income Lab, we will be building your coaching offer together in real time. The wait list is open. The link for the wait list is in the description, or you can go to my website at herincomeedit.com/workshop. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to go get your notebook and your pen, because we're going to be doing a little bit of math at the end of this episode that you might want to jot some numbers down. Please share this episode with your biz bestie or with a friend who needs it. And if you have any questions or comments, drop them in the chat if you're watching live, or you can drop it in the comments if you're watching the replay, because we are about to get into it. We are about to get into the real numbers, the real timelines. Are you ready? If you are ready, I want you to drop ready in the chat. So let me start this conversation off by talking about something that I think most coaches in this space, they know it's true. They know it's true because they've lived it themselves, but almost nobody is really talking about this publicly. And that is the income numbers the coaching industry shows you are not representative. They're not representative. Now, let me be clear, because I'm not saying that people are out here lying. I'm not saying that people are out here trying to pull the wool over your eyes, but I'm saying the incentives of content creation in the coaching space, it rewards the outlier story. And here's what I mean by that. The $100,000 launch that gets talked about, or the first $10,000 month gets the screenshot, right? So it's these big launches that gets talked about. It's these big months that get the screenshots. It's the six figures in the first year. That's what gets the case study. And you can make a crap ton of money in this industry. So I know for certain that many of those stories are real, because they do happen. And so don't misunderstand me by hearing that I'm saying that they don't happen, because they do. But the thing about it is they represent the top of a distribution that has a very long tail of women who are building quietly, women who are making real progress, women who are generating real income, and not seeing their experience reflected anywhere in the content that they're consuming. So there is no representation, right? There is no diversity in this conversation. And we all know that representation matters. We all understand the importance of diversity here. But the women who are building quietly and making progress and generating income, they're not seeing themselves reflected in the screenshots. They're not seeing themselves reflected in those case studies and those conversations. And here's what happens when the only income stories that you see are the outlier ones. Here's what happens: you start to compare your middle to somebody else's highlight reel. You decide at the third month of doing this, after you've done this for 90 days, that you must be doing something completely wrong because you haven't hit the number that you saw on Instagram. There is no representation in these conversations. There's no diversity in these conversations. And that's why I felt it so important to have this conversation here. The other thing that happens when you don't see yourself and you've been doing this for 3 months, you might start to internalize the gap between your results and your results, right? And the results that are being showcased. You start to internalize that as evidence of personal failure rather than a statistical reality. And so what happens to the coach who has no representation, to the coach who doesn't see herself in those numbers because she's not having 10K months within the first 30 days? She's not on track to hit seven figures within the first 12 months. What happens to her? She either quits, or she starts to double down on strategies that are designed for someone who are at a completely different stage in their business than she is. And the thing about it is that both of those outcomes are preventable. Both of them. Like, you don't have to quit and you don't have to double down on things that are designed for someone else who is at a completely different stage in their business. But these things are only preventable if you have honest information, if you have an honest conversation, if you have if you have exposure and accessibility to someone who has been doing this for a few years. I've been in this industry, in this coaching industry since 2019 is when I launched my very first online coaching program. So it's only available to you if someone is going to have this honest conversation with you, somebody like me. And that's what I want to give you today. I want to give you the honest information. I want to I want to normalize that it is okay for you not to have these highlight reel moments or these screenshot moments within your first year in your coaching business. And I want to talk about why coaches who have built significant income sometimes they avoid talking about those real early numbers, those slow numbers, because it's not always dishonesty. Sometimes it's selective memory. Sometimes it's selective memory. If you have gotten a tattoo, now I have gotten tattoos, and the very first time I got a tattoo was a long time ago. It was one of the most painful experiences, I think, that I had ever had at that time in my life, right? But after a while, you forget about that pain because they say once you get one tattoo, the likelihood of you getting another one, the chances of it goes up, right? So what did I do a few years later? I go get another tattoo. And it wasn't because, I was dishonest, like, oh, girl, it doesn't hurt that bad. It's because you just have selective memory. Like, I just forgot how bad it hurt until I got the second one, right? And the same goes for these established coaches. They just forget, honestly, because the early months of starting a coaching business, they are hard. They're hard. And the income is small. It's very small. And the story of how it all came together is a lot more compelling than the story of the slow, uncertain beginning and middle, right? The story about how I have a seven-figure business and how I had my biggest month last October of bringing in $100,000 in sales. That story is a lot more compelling than the one of the coach that's going to be honest and share about the slow, uncertain, and uncomfortable beginnings, those humble beginnings. People forget about their humble beginnings. And humans, we're just wired to tell the prettier story. And we're wired to be attracted to the prettier story. Nobody wants to hear about, the slow, uncertain, and uncomfortable times of a coaching business when all they want is to have a seven-figure business, right? So humans are wired to tell the prettier story, and we're also wired to be attracted to the prettier story. But here's the thing: the slow, uncertain, and uncomfortable beginning and middle of your coaching business, that is exactly where most of the women who are watching this episode, that's where you are right now. You're at that slow, uncertain, uncomfortable part of your business, whether it's the beginning or the middle. You haven't yet arrived to be that seven-figure coach. And here's what I believe that you deserve to know that the slow, uncertain, and uncomfortable beginning and middle is not a sign that something is wrong in your business. I believe that you deserve to know that because the truth is it is the literal path to how your business starts to become sustainable. And that path, that path to the pretty story, to the highlight reel, to the screenshots, that path is available to any woman who stays on it long enough. You have to stay on it long enough. Now, let me give you a realistic picture of what the first year of building a coaching business looks like, of building coaching income. I want to talk about what that looks like. And I'm not about to give you the worst case, and I'm not about to give you the best case either. I want to give you the real case, the real deal, Holyfield case, okay? I want to give you the case that I have watched play out for women building from their skills, from the women who have real jobs and real lives and real constraints on their time. That is the version that I'm going to give you. And I want to say something before we really talk about the numbers. The woman who I'm talking to, the woman who I'm getting ready to describe, she's not leaving her job. I don't believe in leave, quit your job and burn it all down. What I believe in is that your 9 to 5 is actually the first investor in your business. So I'm not talking to the person who wants to leave her job. I'm not describing that. I am not talking to the women who are betting everything on a side hustle. That's not what this conversation about. I'm talking to the woman who wants to build a second stream of income from the skills that she already has alongside a career that she's already built. That is who I'll be describing, okay? And for me, that is the premise of this whole thing, right? That is the whole premise of her income edit, to help women leverage the skills that they already have to build sustainable online businesses and to create secondary and tertiary streams of income while they're working 9 to 5 so that they can have options. Your skills are your backup plan. Your skills are your leverage, and your skills are your next income stream. And the first year in your coaching business, it's about turning that premise into proof. Okay? So let's break this down. What does the first year look like in your coaching in your coaching business when it comes to your income? Let's talk about, we're going to break this down into quarters, right? So the first 3 months is always the hardest, almost always, hands down, almost always the hardest. And it's not because nothing is happening, but it's because what's happening is more or less invisible. In the first 3 months, you're doing a lot of clarity work. You're figuring out who you serve. You're figuring out what you're offering. You're probably having conversations. You are hopefully making early offers. You're getting some no's, a lot of no's, and you're hopefully getting a yes or two. So the income in your first 3 months for most coaches who are building part time, it's somewhere between $0 and $3,000. Yes, I said $0 and $3,000. And I want to be specific about that range because I think it matters. Because making $0 in your first 3 months can be a reality. And this is why we are not burning our jobs to the ground and betting everything on a side hustle, right? This is why we are leveraging our 9 to 5 as the first investors in our coaching businesses, because making $0 in your first 3 months can be a reality. $0 happens when a coach spends the first 3 months in preparation mode and doesn't make any offers. But on the top end of that range, the $3,000 happens when a coach is making offers to human beings and that coach signs 1 or 2 clients at an early stage price. Both of these scenarios are normal. The coach who spends the first 3 months making $0 in preparation mode, and also the coach who makes the first $3,000 within the first 90 days because they're having conversations and they're signing clients. Both of those scenarios are normal, and neither of them is a sign that your business is failing. Because the first 3 months in your coaching business, They're truly not about revenue. They're not about revenue. They're about building the foundation. Can you generate revenue within your first 3 months as a coach? 100% yes. Can you do it on your own? Yeah. But you're more likely to be at the top end of that range when you have someone to help you, to show you the way, to coach you through it. Because the first 3 months are truly about building a foundation, and a solid foundation in the first 3 months is worth more than early revenue that's built on a shaky one. So, sure, you can go out and make some revenue on your own. But if you have someone who is showing you exactly what to do, when to do it, what to say, when somebody says, your coaching offer is too expensive. When you have someone who's literally coaching you through every single step, that foundation isn't going to be as shaky as if you spent the first 3 months trial and error and trying to figure it out on your own. So those are the first 3 months. Realistic revenue, $0 to $3,000. So now let's talk about the next 3 months, months 4 through 6. So this is where the first real momentum in your business, this is where you'll start to see it kind of peek through a little bit. This is where the clarity work from the first 3 months starts to produce cleaner conversations. Hopefully, within those first 3 months, you were having some conversations. Hopefully, you didn't spend those first 3 months in analysis paralysis and research mode. So once you get to your fourth, fifth, and sixth month, this is where cleaner conversations start happening. This is where your offer has been refined enough through market feedback that your offer starts to land more consistently with your target audience. This is also the time when, if you have signed your first clients, this is also the time where your first client results start coming in, and those results produce the kind of confidence within yourself that it shows up in your sales conversations. Because you've already signed some clients, you've already gotten some feedback from those clients, the results start coming in, and you're like, hey, I am the bomb. I do have magic. Like, I did that. Like, I helped her get from point A to point B with only my skills. So that confidence, that shows up in your sales conversations. And the income in months 4 through 6 for a part time coach, remember, if you're just joining live, we are talking about the coach who is building alongside her 9 to 5. So the income, what that looks like in months 4 through 6 for the part time coach who has done the foundational work and is making consistent offers, is typically somewhere between $1,500 and $8,000. And I know that's a wide range. And the spread in that range is almost entirely explained by one thing. Almost entirely explained by one thing. And that one thing is, how many offers are you making? It's not, that range is not explained by how much content you're creating or how many followers you've accumulated. That range is determined by how many direct, specific priced offers you're making to the people who have the problem you solve. And the coaches that are at the top of that range, they're simply having more sales conversations than the coaches at the bottom. That's just the long and short of it. And that is the primary variable. It has nothing to do with content or followers or any of that. It has everything to do with sales conversations. So that is months 4 through 6. Now let's talk about months 7 through 12, because this is where the magic really starts to happen in your coaching business, because this is where the compounding starts to become just plain as day. It becomes evident for you. This is when you'll start to see referrals coming in from those early clients. This is the time when your content is starting to build on itself and it's starting to attract people who weren't in your existing network. So, month 7 to 12 is when your offer is clear enough and it is priced right enough and the delivery is strong enough that clients want to continue with you or they want to come back. That's when this starts to happen. And before I get into the income for months 7 through 12, I need to say something because so many coaches quit before they get to month 7. So many coaches quit before they get to month 7. And it's not because their offer doesn't work or because their business isn't what they should be doing. They quit because of what I talked about at the top of this episode. Because they feel like by the time they get to months 7 through 12, that they should have had the $100,000 launch, right? They feel like something is wrong with them because their business isn't producing the results that they see in somebody else's highlight reel. So most coaches never even make it to 7 to 12 months. And here is the real deal. Online education, specifically coaching, is a $5 billion industry and it is projected to only grow. So AI is not stopping this show, y'all. AI is only making it better. It's making us better. So, are you ready to hear the income for months 7 to 12 now that I got off my soapbox? Month 7 to 12, as a coach who has done the work, so she is typically by this time earning somewhere between $3,000 and $15,000 per month. And again, I know that is a wide range, but again, the spread is largely explained by offer clarity, consistent selling, and the compounding effect of those early client results. And that compounding effect can only happen if you have clients early on in your business, right? So we've just talked about the first 12 months of income. And in that first 3 months, we said it was $0 to $3,000. In that second 3 months, for months 4 through 6, we said it was $1,500 to $8,000. And in that last bit of the year, for months 7 through 12, we said it was somewhere between $3,000 and $15,000, right? So for a part-time coach who is building consistently, who has done the foundational work, who is making offers, the first year in her coaching business, her income is typically between $10,000 and $40,000. I know that that's not what you see online. But again, I just want to emphasize that um, I want to have a very honest conversation with y'all about this because I don't feel like a lot of people are being dishonest. I just feel like oftentimes they're sharing just part of the story. They're sharing the part of the prettiest part of the story, the most attractive part of the story that they believe is going to prompt people and influence people to buy their products, programs, and services. So it's by design that the highlight reel is what it is, and that people aren't sharing this part of the business. So again, a realistic income for the woman who is working 9 to 5 and she is leveraging her skills to create additional streams of income, a realistic first year revenue for her income for her is $10,000 to $40,000. But let's be clear, if you made an additional $10,000 to $40,000 alongside your 9 to 5, how would your life change? How would your life be different? Because again, let's be clear, your employer is probably not giving that to you in a raise, in an annual raise. Your employer is not even giving that to you as a woman as a promotion. Here is a real story. I had lunch with some former coworkers from a long time ago, right? So we still get together every now and then. And we were having a conversation, and one of those coworkers back in the day had gotten a promotion. It was a big promotion for her. She had been working her tookus off to get this promotion. So she gets the promotion. They give her whatever the salary is, right? I don't know what the salary was, but they gave her whatever the salary was. And I'm talking going from like middle management to like the next level up promotion. Somebody comes in with the same title, but less responsibilities as her. And this person that came in, this male that came in, literally was hired, hadn't even been with the company as long as she hadn't done the work. I mean, literally got hired making $40,000 more than her. And she got a promotion. $40,000 more. So again, that $10,000 to $40,000 that you would make in your first year, no, it is not the highlight reel, right? And for a lot of us, if that was the only income we were making, that's not even really life-changing income, if we're honest about it. But how would an additional $10,000 to $40,000 in 1 year, how would that change your life? How would that impact your life? I guess I should say. Because your employer is not giving it to you in an annual raise. They're not. And they're clearly not giving it to you in a promotion. The only way that you could probably make it, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, is if you left your current company and went somewhere else to get it, right? So I want to spend a little bit more time talking about this range, this $10,000 to $40,000 potential that you can make during your first year as a coach, because I know some of you are feeling just a little bit disappointed by it. And I know some of you might be looking at the top of that range, the $40,000, and feeling a little bit skeptical. But here's the thing. Whether you're disappointed by the fact that you're only going to make $10,000, which I think, if you change your mind about the way that you look at it, it's not only $10,000. But if you're disappointed by the number $10,000 and you're feeling a little bit skeptical by the number of $40,000, I want you to understand that those are both normal reactions, because the bottom of that range is real. $10,000 in your first year is what happens when a coach builds slowly, when she prices conservatively, and when she spends a significant amount of time in preparation mode. When she spends way too much time researching, enrolling in courses that aren't really helping her get to where she needs to be. But here's the thing about it. Even if she makes $10,000, she made $10,000. And that's not a failure. That is a legitimate starting point for a business that can grow significantly in year 2 and 3. And then the top of that range is also real, y'all. Like $40,000 in your first year, that is what happens when the coach, she starts making early offers. She prices her work off the top for what it's worth and what it's valued at. And she treats her business like a business, not an expensive hobby from the very beginning, not as something that she just does on the side when she feels like it, And this is not the outlier story that I talked about at the beginning of the episode, right? This is not the highlight reel. This is not what you're going to see on Instagram or on YouTube or on wherever you consume your content on social media. These are not the stories you hear. You don't hear about the coach who made $10,000 in her first year. You never hear about that. But you heard about it here. You heard about it here on Nick at Noon, because I want to have honest, transparent dialogue with you about what it really truly means to be in this industry. And that is why her income edit is different. Her income edit is different because I believe you should keep your job until the data and the numbers say it just doesn't make sense to keep my job anymore. I believe you should have options. I believe you should have options. I don't believe you should be fully dependent on one paycheck, because that's not what that is not what the plan is, right? You want freedom, you want flexibility, you want options, you want security. And that's what building this coaching business on the side gives you. And again, $10,000 to $40,000 in 1 year, that is not the outlier story. But that is the story of a clear, consistent, strategic action that is applied from the very first month you start. That is applied from the very first month you start. Thank you for the love on YouTube. I see you. Now, let me talk about what determines where a coach lands within that 10K to 40K range during her first year, because I think understanding the variables, it gives you something to work with rather than just a number to hope for. Because hope is not going to make you a single dollar in your business. So if you're taking notes, this is the time that you might want to start jotting some things down if you haven't already, because I'm about to talk about the variables, right? These things that are going to give you something to work with that you can actually apply. So the first variable that determines where you land in that range of 10K to 40K in your first year is how early you make offers. And I've said that I don't know how many times in this episode, but that is one of the first and most important variables. I shouldn't say most important. I take that back. Scratch that from the record. But this is the single big one. It's not your content. It is not your audience size. It's not how many people subscribe to your email list. It's not how clear you are in your niche. It is how soon do you start making offers? Do you do that in month 1, month 2, 3, or 7, 8, 9? How soon are you making offers? A coach who makes her first offer in the first month will almost always out earn a coach who makes her first offer in month 4. And it's not because that coach who made the offer in month 1 is more skilled, but it's because she's had 3 more months of market feedback. She's had 3 more months of refining her offer on that feedback. She has a 3-month head start of building the confidence that comes from having set her price and then having had someone say yes to that price. The first time, my very first coaching offer was $997. And I sold it in a conversion event. Back then it was a webinar, and it was an hour webinar. And somebody signed up for my coaching for $1,000. I literally made $1,000 for that hour, and my mind was blown. Not only was my mind blown, but I was hyped. I was like, well, shoot, if I can sell this one time, then I know I can sell it, more than one time. I had proof of concept. Somebody bought what I sold for 1,000. Like, to me, it was just the biggest thing. But the point here is the coach who starts to make offers early and starts to, just learn really quickly, her confidence, it starts to build it faster than the coach that waits until excuse me, until month 4. And the thing about it is every month you delay your first offer is a month of compounding that you're not building, compounding in your confidence, compounding in your price, compounding in the way that you show up to your sales conversations. And that delay has a measurable cost in the income that you make your first year. So that's the first variable. The very first variable that determines how much you're going to make in your first year is how early you start making offers. So the second variable that determines where a coach lands within that first year income range of $10,000 to $40,000 is her price. It's her price. And we've been talking about price all week. We can just, the theme for this week on Nick at Noon is price. Because here's how it shows up specifically in your first year income. So, a coach who is charging $500 per client, she needs 20 clients to generate $10,000. Whereas a coach who charges $2,000 per client, she needs 5 clients to generate that same amount, right? And the $500 per client coach and the $2,000 per client coach, those are not the same business models. They're not the same business models. 20 clients at $500 is a hustle model. That is that every day I'm hustling because it requires more time, it requires more energy, it requires more management, and it produces more burnout. And at that price point, this coach is not having clients. She's not getting clients who are committed to doing the work. So she's struggling to get testimonials. She's struggling to get to get case studies because of that price point. It is the hustle model. 5 clients at $2,000 is a sustainable model. It's a sustainable model. It allows you to deliver your best work to each of your clients, and you still will have the capacity to build because you're not working with 20 clients. Remember, you still have a whole job, 9 to 5, and a whole full life going on, right? So $500 will burn you out quicker than anything else in this business. And the coaches at the top of that year one range, near that $40,000, they're almost always charging more per client. And they're not necessarily signing more clients. They're not necessarily signing more clients. Price is your leverage, and undercharging is one of the most expensive decisions you can make in your first year. I literally just got off of a training with a coach who coaches on using YouTube for your business. And on the training, obviously, it was to pitch her offer. And her offer was a 12-month container. And she was charging $5,000 if you pay in full, or $999, not $1,000 for 6 months, basically. And she increased the price from $2,000. The program used to be $2,000, but the reason that she increased the price, she didn't say this, but I follow her, and I've been listening to her content. The reason that she increased the price is because she has a very specific income goal that she wants to meet this year. And One of the easiest ways to inject more revenue and income in your business is to raise your price. And that's exactly what this second variable talks about. And what I mean about the $500 coaching offer versus the $2,000 coaching offer. You're putting in, well, no, you're not. I was getting ready to say you're putting in the same amount of work, but you're not. $2,000 is a much more leveraged price point. It allows you to work with less clients while still hitting your income goals and still having the time and the flexibility and the freedom and all the things that we say that we want out of these businesses. It affords you that because you are literally working with a fraction of the clients than someone who is charging $500 per client. Okay? So the first variable, again, that affects whether you're not at the $10,000 or the $40,000 is how early you make offers. The second variable is your price. And the third variable that determines where a coach lands in that range of 10K to 40K in her first year is consistency. Not content consistency, action consistency. The consistency of making offers, the consistency of having conversations, the consistency of following up, the consistency of showing up for your business every single day, every single week, every single month, even when your motivation is low and the results are slow. Year one income isn't built in the good weeks. The income you make in your first year, it's built in the weeks when you showed up even when nothing happened. It's built when you made the offer when you are afraid of being rejected. Your income during your first year is built when you followed up even when it felt uncomfortable. And what I just described right there, those are the invisible weeks that are not in the highlight reel. But they're the weeks, and this is the, remember, we're laying foundation. This is the foundation of everything that shows up in your year end number. Okay? Now let's talk about this fourth variable. And this is the last variable. So I gave you three variables. How soon you start selling your offer will affect where you land within that 10K to 40K range. Your price will affect where you land within that 10K to 40K range. And then I just talked about your consistency will determine where you land within that 10K to 40K range during your first year. And also just don't quit. Don't quit. So the fourth variable that determines where a coach lands in the range of the $10,000 to $40,000 in their first year is how quickly you can close the gap between what you think the market wants and what the market is telling you it wants. Now, I said none of these were more important than the other, but I really think this one is the most important. Not that, they're all of them are important, but I think this one really, 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 really is important. And I talked about it a little bit yesterday when I talked about how a coach will come into this business and be so inwardly focused that she forgets about you're in this business to provide a service, that we're in the service industry, and that the person and the people who we really should be concerned about is not how, what we think, but it's about what our ideal client thinks, what the market thinks, right? And that feedback loop here, I think it's important because every offer that doesn't convert, it tells you something. Every sales conversation that ends in a not right now, that sales conversation, it tells you something. Every single piece of content that you publish that sticks versus a piece of content that doesn't stick, it tells you something. And the coaches who are at the top of that first year range, they're the ones who listen to the feedback and then they quickly adjust. They take their feelings out of it, right? They take their feelings out of it. You know, we put our blood, sweat, and tears into these businesses. And albeit for somebody to come back and say, you know what, that doesn't quite stick with me. That doesn't quite land with me. It's easy for us to get in our feelings instead of just taking that feedback and adjusting it based off of what we heard. So these are not the coaches who built their offer once and repeated it and did what they wanted to do and didn't change it for 12 months and hoping that the result would change. The feedback loop is truly one of the most valuable assets in your first year, second year, third year, because your business is going to evolve. So, this feedback loop, I want you to lean into it. I want you to lean into it. Now, I want to spend some time on the word consistent. We talked about this in the variables, right? But I think this is one of the most misunderstood words in the coaching income conversation because consistent doesn't mean the same amount of income every month. And I want to say that clearly because I think a lot of coaches carry this idea that consistent income means predictable. It means steady. It means recurring. It means reliable month over month sameness. And when your income doesn't look like that in your first year, you start to assume that you're not building a sustainable business. But here's what consistent income looks like in the first year of your coaching business. It looks lumpy, lumpy, bumpy. It goes just like this. It has a big month followed by a quiet month. It has a launch that goes well, followed by a period of delivery where the sales activity drops. It has months where the referrals come in unexpectedly, and then months where the pipeline is slower than you like. And that lumpiness, it's not a sign of an inconsistent business. That is the normal cadence and the normal pattern of a service business in its first year. And we are in the business of service. And learning to manage that lumpiness financially and emotionally is one of the most important skills you can build in your first year. And again, that is why at Her Income Edit, we are building alongside our 9 to 5. What consistent actually means in a coaching business is consistent activity, consistent offers, consistent conversations, consistent delivery for the clients that you have, consistent visibility in the places that your potential clients spend time. The income follows the activity, not immediately and not in a perfectly predictable pattern, but the income follows activity over time. Consistent activity produces consistent income, I promise you. And that lumpiness, it starts to smooth out as your business matures. And I also want to address something about the first year income that most coaches don't plan for. And that is the slow start. It is not permanent. The first year is the hardest year because you're building from scratch. You're literally building, and you have an idea in your head, and the thing that's in your head, it becomes tangible. You literally built something out of nothing. You have no existing client base. You don't have testimonials in your first year. You don't have a referral network. You have no track record of results. And every single sale during your first year, it requires you to build trust with someone who doesn't yet have evidence that your coaching even works. But here is the beautiful thing. Year 2 is different. Because in your second year, you have the things that you built in your first year. You have clients whose results you can point to. You have referrals coming from people who are happy to share their experience that they had with you. You have a clearer offer, you have a sharper message, you have a more confident sales conversation, and all of that is your first year investment that pays off in your second year. And this is why quitting your business in your first year is the most expensive decision most coaches make. Quitting and or taking a step back, because they're quitting right before the compounding starts. They're quitting right before the referrals kick in. They're quitting right before the results start doing the selling for them. Your first year is not your ceiling. It is your foundation. And the foundation is always the most work for the least visible return. And that is not a bug in the system. That is how building a business works. Now, at the beginning of this episode, I said I wanted to do some quick math. So before I close, let's do this quick math, because I think seeing the numbers laid out specifically makes this whole conversation a little bit more tangible and a little bit more usable. So let's say you're a professional woman building a coaching business on the side alongside your 9 to 5, and you have about 10 hours a week to dedicate to building your business, right? Because you have a whole full life. So your coaching package is priced at $2,000 for 8 weeks. And you start with your existing network because you don't want to do social media right now, or you don't have a social media audience. So in the first 3 months, you spend most of your time on clarity and conversation. So let's say you have about 20 conversations, you make 8 offers, 3 people say yes. $2,000 times 3, that's $6,000 in your first 3 months from 20 conversations that you had. And that is from a standing start. Like that wasn't, you were just standing and then you started. So in months 4 through 6, your offer is sharper, your conversations are more confident by that time. And the first 3 clients that you signed in the first 3 months, they're getting results, and one of them actually referred somebody. So then you make 10 offers during months 4 through 6. 4 people say yes. That's another $8,000 in those months. So right now you're at $14,000 after 6 months, part-time, from your existing network and without a social media following. I guarantee that's more than you got in your raise this year. I guarantee it. So let's talk about months 7 through 12. This is when the compounding effect starts showing up, right? Referrals are coming in, your content is starting to work for you, your confidence in sales conversations has been built through the repetition, through the reps. So you sign another 8 clients across that time frame. That's $16,000 in months 7 through 12. So your year one total is $30,000. Again, this is part-time. You started from a standing start. You started from your existing skills. This was built primarily through network conversations and having a clear, well-priced offer. And let's be clear, this is not a highlight reel number. It is not the screenshot that you see on Instagram, but it is real and it is achievable. And it is built entirely on the foundation of the things that we talked about this week, that we talked about today: a clear offer, a confident price, and having conversations with people. Stop. Stop. And this is built entirely on the foundation of consistent action, even when your results are slow. So here's what year 2 looks like for that coach who made $30,000 working part time. With the referral network that she's built by this time, the testimonials that she's collected, the offer she's refined, and the confidence that she's developed, her year 2 income is typically 2 to 3 times that of her first year. And that is not magic, that is compounding. And it only happens if the first year gets built. Now, before I close, I want to bring it back to something that I mentioned at the top, and that is on May 30th. I am hosting Her Income Lab. It is the live workshop where we build your coaching offer together in real time. And here is why today's conversation connects directly to that. The math that I just walked you through only works if your offer is right, if your price is right, and if the clarity is there from the jump. The difference between a first year that produces $10,000 and one that produces $30,000 is not hustle. It is not working harder. It's having an offer that's clear enough to sell, priced enough to be sustainable, and specific enough to make the right person say yes to your offer immediately. And that is what Her Income Lab is building. Registration isn't open yet, but as I mentioned earlier, the wait list is. And the women who are on that list are first when the doors open because there is limited seating. And there's some other goodies that I have for waitlist members. The link is in the description for Her Income Lab, or you can go to my website directly at herincomeedit.com/workshop. Get on the list. Get on the list because the first year of building coaching income isn't the year of the highlight reel. It's the year of the foundation. Let's normalize this. That first year is lumpy. It is slower than you expected, not now because you listened to this conversation, so you know what to expect. And that first year requires more courage than you thought you might need. It produces more than most people give it credit for when they're in the beginning and the middle of it. But here's what I want you to hold on to when your first year feels slow. You're not just building income. You're building options. You're building leverage. You're building the thing that means a 3-minute phone call can never be the end of your story. Multiple streams of income isn't a luxury, y'all. It is security. And the first year of your coaching business is the year you start building that security from the skills you already have. The number at the end of your first year is not the point of any of this. The foundation you built at the end of your first year, that is the point. Because that foundation is what year 2, year 3, and everything else after it is built on. So I want you to stay in it. I encourage you to do the work. I want you to make the offers. I want you to price your offer right. And I want you to trust that the compounding is coming because it is. Now, I want you to come back tomorrow for Hot Takes Thursday because I've got something to say about the website conversation that most coaches are having, and they're having it completely backwards. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button here on YouTube and set or turn on the bell notifications so you don't miss a beat. I am here Monday through Friday at noon Mountain Time, live for Nick at Noon. If you found or heard something valuable in today's conversation, let me know in the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.